To become a strong and excellent human, there are 4 foundational pillars that must be trained: strength, mobility, cardiovascular endurance, and the mind. These 4 are interconnected, which means enhancing one will benefit the others, while neglecting one will weaken the entire structure. Most importantly, the first 3 pillars of physical training is deeply intertwined with the mind training. Stronger mind, stronger body, and stronger body, the stronger mind. Therefore, these pillars work in a system, and the training revolves around the central idea of use it or lose it. First pillar is strength training. The goal is to become physically stronger by building muscular strength and mass. There are various ways to build strength, and the most effective method is a well-balanced training of progressive overloading, a gradual increasing in stimulus to muscle by adding weight, and endurance bodyweight training, high repetition training using our own bodies. Typically, I would dedicate 70% of my time and effort for bodyweight training and 30% for the weighted training. And the philosophy behind ratio is that you need to dedicate more time mastering your own self first, in this case, the body weight, and then control the external objects, whatever it is that you're lifting in this context. Plus, the only requirement for bodyweight training is literally your body. It can be done anytime, anywhere, everywhere, and therefore it is far more accessible way of training. And strength training can be grouped into the following motions for simplicity: variation of pushing and pulling motion from the upper body, like the push-up, dips, pull-ups, and muscle-ups, and pushing and pulling motion through the lower body, squatting, lunging, deadlifting, Nordic curling, and leg raising. All these exercises can be scaled into individual level and physical attributes and a level of experiences. For example, for squatting, beginners can simply sit and stand from a chair, then scale up to a bodyweight squat, and then to variation of weighted squats. The ultimate goal of strength training is to be able to perform complex movements that requires connection of varying motion into one, like the clean or the handstands. Now, strength training is great. However, by itself, it has potential side effects of making our body become stiff and immobile. And that's when the next pillar comes in: mobility. The goal of mobility training is to expand our bodily ranges, but also moving well in that wider ranges. Therefore, mobility training includes the following 2 categories: lengthening and strengthening. Lengthening mobility is a great practice for extending our bodily range, mainly built around the passive stretching, holding a position for 30 seconds to 2 minutes for maximum efficiency. Many will be familiar to this approach as a traditional stretching. Strengthening mobility, on the other hand, involves active stretching, where you add deliberate movements and weights to strengthen the extended range. It would take form of intensively flexing stretched muscles to add strength in the extended range. Nordic curls, Jefferson curls, and weighted pancakes are a few examples of those exercises where you're becoming stronger in that final vulnerable ranges. However, these trainings do require greater muscle tension awareness, so I would encourage starters to start working on their flexibility first to gain the muscle tension awareness. Once you develop the flexibility and awareness of how far you can stretch your muscles, then you would gradually implement weighted training. The rule of thumb is start moving more in wider ranges, slowly and gradually. Third and final pillar for physical excellence is through cardiovascular endurance training. The focus is to strengthen your heart and lungs. Best practice, in my opinion, is long distance running, due to its meditative nature and the exposure it gives you to outdoor and fresh air. But any other heart pumping exercises like swimming and biking are valuable options. Just like previous 2 pillars, cardio training is broken down into 2 main arenas: explosive training and endurance training, where majority of the time and effort is spent for endurance training. Explosive training involves being able to cover short distance with power and speed, therefore requires more higher intensity. Whereas endurance training is lengthening the duration of your time your heart is at work with comparatively lower intensity. Endurance training is therefore a more suitable training regime for longevity, as it causes less stress and damage to the body, especially to the joints. Plus, endurance is always a priority as it tends to be the foundation for any explosive training methods. I personally find the mileage of around 10 kilometers to be an optimal distance for endurance training, challenging enough but not overly rigorous distance for strengthening the heart overall. You might have noticed that these physical training involves a pattern of the following: a combination of intensive training with less intensive endurance training. Similar mechanism applies to the final, yet most important pillar for training human excellence, the mind training. This will dictate the core of any human activity. The goal of mind training is to become more deliberate, purposeful, and stoic in day-to-day lives. Although all physical training technically falls under mind training, it's worth mentioning separate practices solely for mental strengthening purposes. This training pillar will help objectifying your inner voice and the negative bias nature that our mind tend to possess. The purpose of it is to build clarity in life, having more accurate perception of reality, not governed by emotions and biased thoughts. Such state will be extremely difficult to achieve or maintain, but there are 3 foundational practices that can be greatly effective. Conscious breathing is the most foundational and effective form of mind training, where you simply notice the way you breathe for an extended duration of time. It's a helpful practice to slow down our minds and bring back our perception back to the present, instead of lingering in the illusional past or future or even digital space. Plus, by practicing breathing, we are training to be not absorbed by our tornado of thoughts, therefore practicing to separate our thoughts from ourselves. In this day and age of constant visual stimulation and informational overload, sitting down just breathing without any external stimulus is a necessary act for our overworked brain. Simple act of breathing in through the nose for 5 seconds and breathing out through the mouth for 10 seconds is a first step to mindfulness, bringing our awareness into our metaphysical self and the now. Then you can scale up the duration from 5 minutes to 10 to 20 and even to an hour. And you'll be surprised how such simple thing of breathing that we do every moment is often neglected and not done properly and not tuned regularly. Breathing is therefore a fundamental skill that leads to a greater awareness in anything that we do. And with greater awareness, you'll have access to more control over your life. Our body and mind is not equipped for this abundance of food. Human DNA is built around scarcity because our ancestors, hunter-gatherers, starved for multiple days if they couldn't successfully hunt. Constant eating, made with excess oil, sugar, chemicals, is therefore suboptimal to how our body is actually designed. And stopping eating for a specific period of time is simple yet powerful tool to declutter our mind, especially the mind from all this intake of junk. To oversimplify, fasting gives our organs a chance to rest from all the digesting work it needs to do. There are thousands of scientific research that proves the benefits of fasting to human beings, but to approach it more from a philosophical point of view, by fighting hunger, one of our most innate survival desires, we are practicing reclaiming ourselves from bodily instinct. Rather, we are acting with self-will and rationality. I theorize that if we can master fighting hunger, fighting other human desires become a lot easier. And often, it is the inability to control these impulses of desire that leads to catastrophes in life. Now, this doesn't mean you should start fasting cold turkey right away. Rather, start monitoring your behavior first, and ask yourself if you're eating with purpose or eating out of habit or impulse. From that self-awareness, you can then start regulating your consumption and your eating window. I personally find 48 hours of fasting once every month to be a good compromise, but the fasting window can be personally designed. Always practice with moderation and consult with experts first. Last but not least, exposing yourself to the cold can be an extremely uncomfortable stimulus, and for that very reason, it is highly effective for practicing mind control. The idea is putting yourself in deliberate external stress and learning to overcome the survival instinct of seeking comfort that kicks in from such experiences. And we can all agree that there is nothing more alarmingly uncomfortable than jumping into a freezing winter water. There are numerous science-backed benefits of cold exposure to the body, but again, in realms of mind training, it is a voluntary act of facing the discomfort and finding peace in midst of such environment that trains our mind to seek tranquility in spite of any external conditions. Many modern cities don't have access to clean lake or bodies of water, so taking a cold shower every day is an accessible option for starters. The underlying principle in mental training is simple as expanding our mind's comfort zone by deliberately putting ourselves in stressful environments. It is practice of escaping our brain's signal for comfort and habit energy. Purposeful act of taking small dosage of discomfort is sort of like a vaccination against big adversities that life may throw at you. In short, train to become comfortable with discomfort. To summarize, strength, mobility, cardio, and the mind are the pillars of trainings that we must do in order to become a strong and excellent human being. All these training pillars are based on the fundamental principle of use it or lose it, and expanding comfort zone. The key message is that we must deliberately train our body and mind to own them and master them, not be governed by them. This will take an immense amount of dedication and persistence, which can sometimes be overwhelming. Now, that being said, this active choice to govern ourselves is a necessary and foundational work for anyone who wants to live a life with purpose and conviction. Now, each of these practices are concepts and practices that scientists and experts study for more than decades. Plus, it took me personally years of practice to even put this understanding into a language and this simplified explanation. Therefore, I acknowledge that this video is merely an oversimplified introduction to a vastly complex journey of human mastery, which may vary person to person. The goal is to merely simplify and break down the complexity as best as we can so we can tackle it with more ease. Therefore, please take what you liked and leave behind what you didn't. I appreciate you for tuning in, and may you find persistence and strength in your journey ahead. Please leave any of your valuable thoughts or insights in the comments.